morning, everyone. I welcome all of you to this online webinar on AWS architecting or AWS solution architecting. So, guys, my name is Sanjay Singh, and I have 11 years of experience in IT training and in consultancy. So, if I'm talking about me, so apart from this training, I have a production knowledge also. I have few certifications in uh, AWS, in Microsoft, in Cisco, in Huawei. So if I'm talking about AWS, so I have certification in cloud practitioner, solution architecting associate, and in professional as well. Apart from this AWS domain, I have certification in Microsoft domain as well. So I have certification into Azure Administrator and Azure Architecting. So apart from this Microsoft Cloud domain, I have certification in Cisco networking switching, Microsoft Server family, and apart from Microsoft, apart from Cisco, I have certification in Huawei as well. So I'm MCT as well. I'm a Microsoft trainer, certified trainer as well. I'm a Huawei certified trainer as well into routing and switching. So these are the certifications which I'm currently holding right now. So welcome guys, welcome to this online webinar on solution architecting on AWS, where we will understand if you will get a chance to design or architect, or if you need to give a solution to your customer, how you will give solution to your customer in terms of AWS services, where you need to provision AWS resources or you need to use AWS resources for your customers, for your clients. Correct. So before starting this webinar, let me introduce Cognitia as well, just because Cognitia is the world's leading digital talent transformation company. So we trained more than 1 lakh plus professionals worldwide, and we delivered training over 45 countries. So we have 450 plus customers here across the globe. We are authorized partner for Red Hat, for Automation Anywhere, ITL, and Microsoft, ISC Square, and we have lots of authorization as well. So apart from this, we have some of domain where we have excellence in those domains. So guys, what we can do whenever we'll start the technical portion, so if there would be any query from your side, what you all can do, you can note down your queries. I will give you time after this webinar. I'll give you time, so where you can raise your queries, okay, and I'll answer to all your queries. So note down your queries and you can put your query into chat box. So these are the domains where we have the excellence. We have excellence into machine learning, in AI, microservices, robotic automation, Internet on Things, big data analytics, DevOps, cloud computing, cybersecurity, BI technologies, professional developments. So now, what topic we are going to cover into this webinar? So basically, we are going to cover what is cloud, what is AWS. Then we will discuss about one of the foundational service, which is EC2. Okay, this is the basic service in AWS, EC2. Then we'll discuss about the VPC, then AWS Lambda overview, and CloudTrail overview. So these are the topics which we will discuss into this webinar, and definitely you will get some idea. So on the AWS platform, how to configure all these resources. So what would be the benefit? So let me start with the basics. So first of all, we need to understand why we are going to use this AWS. Okay, so for this we need to understand the history of AWS. So AWS has started their e-commerce website, which was Amazon, which is Amazon.com. Okay, so when they have started this Amazon.com, so they were struggling with the high availability and scalability issue with this website. So now, what was the solution? If they are struggling with their website, where they are struggling with the scalability, where they are struggling with the high availability of their resources, and they are into e-commerce and network now. So what they did, what their engineers did, so they come up with the solution. They have created distributed environment, but this environment is created without white paper, without planning, without high availability, so without scalability. So solution was well architected framework, well documented APIs, which they have used. That was the solution for their problem. Okay, so which become the standards. for service development in Amazon. Correct. Through these well-documented API, they develop their data centers. Okay, they develop their services. Okay. Now, when they have their databases like services like databases, compute, storage components. Okay. So if you will provision all those resources into your data center, which will took almost 3 months to build all these. Okay. So now they are building their infrastructure, but without no planning, as I told you. Okay. And there is no reusability of their resources. So that was also a issue when you are going to build a data center. But Amazon did this, okay, and initially they faced this issue in their data center. So you can use these as a case study as well. So solution, what they did, they built internal services to create highly available. That means whatever service you are going to use nowadays, so they all are highly available. Correct. So that idea come in their mind that whatever service we are going to build into our data center should be highly available, should be scalable, should be reliable architecture. Once their data center is built like this, they have started selling their infrastructure to customers publicly. Correct. So in 2006, they have started selling these services as AWS. Then AWS come into picture. So that is the history of AWS. Now, what kind of services which they have? So what is cloud computing? So first of all, let me introduce the cloud computing. Now, if we need to define cloud computing, so what would be cloud computing? So cloud computing means if we are going to access any IT service through internet or through your browser. That means if you are accessing any IT service, any means compute, storage, network, or any IT service, so you are using cloud computing platform. You're using cloud computing services. And whatever service you are using, the main concept is pay as you go. So whatever service you are going to use, you have to pay for that service, which will be metered by your service provider. Correct. So like if you're using any virtual machine, so you use your virtual machine for 1 hour, so you have to pay for that virtual machine for 1 hour, so which would be metered by your service provider, and you have to pay for the service which you are going to use. Then what would be the difference if I'm going to create my own server in my network in my data center? So why I go to this cloud platform where we are going to use the services which is hosted somewhere into AWS data center? So why? Just because whenever you are going to purchase, whenever you are going to build your own data center, you need to do upfront investment first of all for every resource which you are going to use inside your data center. So there would be upfront cost which you will bear. So rather than focusing on your business continuity, first of all, you will focus on your infrastructure. So you have to build your infrastructure, you have to invest your capital, okay, which is known as capex model here. Okay, now if I'm a startup, if I'm a middle organization, okay, if I'm comes into small to middle organization, okay, category of organization I am. So what I'll do there? I'm not going to invest lots of money into my business or infrastructure. In that case, what you can do, you can use cloud services from cloud service provider, okay, and you will only pay for the service which you are going to use. So rather than focusing on your infrastructure, you can focus on your business continuity. And one more thing, whatever service application and dev and test kind of environment which we are going to perform on cloud platform. Now cloud resources are on demand. Whenever you need, you can create your resource, test it, you can deprovision your resource at any time. So now learning is easy on cloud. Why? Just because you can do mistakes here, which you can't do into production environment. In production environment, in production data center, so if you have to do anything, you need to create a ticket and which will be approved by your team and your manager. Then you can perform that task into your dev and test kind of environment. Okay, that means learning is very difficult. And if you have to test something into production, which would be a difficult task for you into production environment, but here you can learn your services, your resources easily just because you can provision at on demand. The services are on demand. You can provision at any time. You can test. You can do mistakes. Okay, and you can deprovision your services on AWS cloud. So now there are 6 advantages on cloud computing. trade capital expense on variable expense, as I told you, benefit from massive economic of scale, stop guessing about capacity. That means you don't need to guess about the capacity of your services. Just provision your resource and monitor your resource. But through monitoring, you would be able to understand, you will get forecast, you will get the analytics through which you will understand that is the uses of my resources. So if you want, just because resources which we are going to use, they are elastic, they are scalable. So anytime you can scale up and scale down your resources as per your utilization, which you can monitor. So increase speed and agility. As I told you, resources are on demand. Okay, so whenever you need, you can create your resource anywhere on the globe with few clicks. Correct. Focus on what matters. So you only need to focus on what you want, basically, you rather than focusing on the infrastructure. Correct. Go globe in minutes. So you can create your resources anywhere. Correct. So these are the 6 advantages of cloud computing which we have into AWS. Now AWS data center. So we need to understand now whatever resource I'm going to place or whatever I'm going to create into AWS account. So where these resources will be placed, correct? So that we need to understand. So then you will get an idea, like I'm going to create, if I'm creating any resource into a US East 2, which is a region code here, correct? So what would be the infrastructure, okay, kind of the infrastructure, kind of the data center which they have, or where my resource will be placed, so that you would be able to understand by this data center terminology which AWS is using. So basically the data centers are placed into regions, correct? So AWS have right now 24 launched regions. So the services are into 24 regions where they have 77 availability zones. Now what is availability zone? That we need to understand. So if I'm talking about availability zone, what it does mean? It means isolated data center. Correct. So now we need to assume like this would be a region where I'm going to provision my services into AWS cloud. So this region would be like US East 1. Okay, so 1 representing North Virginia. So that means I'm going to provision, I'm going to deploy my resources into North Virginia region or US East 1, which is a region code here. So where my resource will be placed, just because in North Virginia, AWS have multiple data centers. Okay, so these data centers are divided as a availability zone. So they all are isolated from each other. Like if I'm talking about first data center, which would be 1A, that means first availability zone, then 1B, then 1C, then 1D, 1E. So you will get these alphabets which represents availability zones, and it will vary as per the region you will select. So whenever you will select any region into your account, so you will get availability zone for your resources. Okay, and you will get a chance where you are going to place your resources. Now why we have multiple availability zones here? So these are the physical data centers into AWS particular region, whatever region you have selected. Like if I'm going to select North Virginia, so this would be the availability zones or physical data centers where my resource will be placed. Whenever we are coming to solution architecting part, correct? That means there is a customer who is looking for a solution, okay, from our organization, okay, and we need to give a solution which should be highly available and scalable for their resources. In that case, what you will do, you will provision your resources into multiple AZ environment. As I told you, all these availability zones in a region, they all are isolated from each other. That means whatever hardware would be there, like the racks, their network, their power, they all are isolated from each other. But yes, they all are interconnected with high link and least latency link. Correct. So they all are interconnected. The resources which would be into availability zone 1, which would that would be isolated from other availability zones. Now, how we are going to make a highly available environment? So what you can do, you can place your resources like your web server 1 into first AZ, then web server 2 into second AZ, then web server 3 into third AZ, and then fourth would be into fourth AZ, fourth availability zone. That means you have placed your resources into multiple data centers in this region, which is US East 1. Now, whenever you will place your resources into these multiple orbital zone, you are making your resources highly available. Why? Just because if there would be any outage for this data center, still your services will be running from other data centers. Correct. So now you can make your resources highly available through different through placing your resources into different availability zones. So these availability zones you can understand like a individual data center. Reasons. So now these availability zones which we are talking about here, like these data centers which AWS have. So again, AWS have 77 availability zones, that means 77 data centers in their regions. And all these data centers, all these availability zones would be into a region. And this region represents a geographic location. Correct. So where you will get your multiple data centers. This is the global infrastructure of AWS, where you can see we have regions, we have availability zones, we have new regions which will be coming soon. So right now, 6 announced regions. That means there would be 6 new regions which would be added into AWS, and there would be 12 availability zones which are going to introduce soon. Correct. So that is the information which I'm providing to you. And apart from this region and availability zone, AWS have their edge locations as well. Just because AWS have a global infrastructure here, which you can see over the globe. So now across the globe, they have their global infrastructure where they have their resources. Now all these regions, they all are paired. Okay, so paired through high fiber link. So if they all are paired through high fiber link, that means they all are connected. So in every region, in every country, they have their edge locations as well, where users will get, or their web application can cache their contents, which should be which could be dynamic or static content. They can cache to users' locations, so user will not face any performance or latency issue if they are going to access any service. Like my web application is hosted into US East region. Now that is a global application, so that means any the users who will be who are going to access my resources or my web application, they can access my web application from anywhere in the globe. Now whenever I'm getting the customers from Asia, okay, or from different part of the globe, so might be the user who is going to access my resources from Asia, so they are facing some latency issue, they are facing some performance issue. If my website is uh, online gaming website or online video or movie website where my users are going to stream videos or they're going to watch live videos. So in that case, we need to increase our performance and we need to focus on latency. That means my user will not face any latency issue at their end. So in that case, what we can do, we can provision our resources into our users location, which would be a cost to your organization, which would be not a best practice for you. So in that case, we have a service into AWS which is known as CloudFront, CDN, content delivery network, which you can use, and through that you can cache your content on user side. Now where these content will be cached, those servers are known as edge servers and those locations are known as edge locations. So AWS have 220 plus locations, 220 plus edge locations. Correct. So where you can cache your content and users will not get users will not face any performance issue, any latency issue, and they will get their content locally from their edge servers. So now again, as I told you, we have edge locations here, multiple edge locations. So if the AWS don't have their network in that particular region, so they have tie up with the third-party ISPs as well, and they are using their network, their backbone network as well. Correct. So that means AWS have tie up. AWS have its own network, global network, and apart from this, they have tie up with third-party ISPs as well. Now, the main part of this webinar with EC2. So when we are talking about EC2, now what is EC2? That is called Elastic Compute Cloud into AWS. When we are saying elastic, that means you can provision, you can easily expand, okay, or increase or decrease, or you can uh, specify, you can create a condition where you can scale up and scale down automatically. Correct. So the resources which you are going to provision into AWS cloud, they are elastic, they are scalable. Now, when we are talking about this EC2, so we need to understand one thing here. It is EC2. So any cloud service provider, any means any, AWS, Azure, Google. So they all have the fundamental, okay, and they all are following one concept which is known as service model, cloud service model, in which you will get, like, there are three terms: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Now this EC2, which comes under into infrastructure as a service. Now what it does mean by infrastructure as a service? Infrastructure as a service means, that means you will specify your requirement. As per your requirement, you will get a hardware, okay, with OS. So you will get a hardware with OS. So whatever platform you will specify, like I need Windows, I need Linux. In Linux, we have different flavors like Red Hat, Ubuntu, SUSE, Debian. So as per your requirement, you will get your operating system, correct? And then you will get your hardware. Now, this operating system and hardware which is provided to you, that is provided by your service provider, which would be your cloud service provider like AWS. Correct. Now you would be responsible for managing your operating system and for this virtual machine. That means if I'm going to use your Windows Server 2016, correct. So I have to install the rules, features inside this virtual machine. So whatever rules and feature I will install, this server will become that particular rules and features server, like a DNS, web server, file server, ADDS server, correct. So whatever roles and service I will install inside it, so I would be responsible for all those. Okay. Or if I'm going to host a web application, like if I'm going to create a .NET web application, so I would be responsible for my binaries, for my data and application, on accessibility as well, for this resource which I'm going to place here on cloud service provider. Correct. So for this, we all need to understand about this infrastructure, platform, and software as a service concept. Then you would be able to understand that, like, there is the responsibility model where customer is responsible for managing resources and the service provider is responsible for managing your resources. So we need to understand that responsibility model. So just because I'm limited to this webinar, so we'll do this into next webinar. I'll explain you what they are and what would be the responsibility for customers and for cloud service provider. Now, if I'm going to host a web application on AWS platform, I will create a EC2 instance, okay, which would be infrastructure as a service. Or what I can do, I can create a platform as a service as well. We have a platform as a service which is known as Elastic Beanstalk. Okay, so if you have knowledge of basic infrastructure, like on-premise infrastructure, how to manage VMs, how to create VMs. So if you have, and how to manage network, database, so you can go with infrastructure as a service where you will get the most control on your resource which you are going to provision. Now, next thing is platform as a service. In platform as a service, where you will get the less control on your web application. Why? Just because you only need to specify your platform. Like, let me give you one example. So let's suppose I am a developer and I don't have knowledge of this infrastructure. I don't know what is the CPU, how many virtual CPUs, and what is the network. So I don't know anything about this. I don't know about the elastic load balancer and the auto scaling part. I don't know anything about these resources. Correct. But I need to host a web application. I need to provision a web application into .NET, into Java, into Python, and into Go. So now, whatever binaries you are going, whatever runtime you're going to use, basically, you will specify your runtime on your service provider. Like I need to provision an application on .NET. So what AWS will do? AWS will give you a recommended infrastructure for running .NET application on their platform. So you will get a ready-to-use platform, okay, where you can host your web application on .NET. Similarly, if you have to host your web application through Java codes, you will specify your runtime, like I'm going to publish my course into Java. So AWS will give you a platform, okay, where you can run your Java application. So you only need to focus on your binaries and your data and application. Correct. So that comes into PaaS solution. So now on EC2, that means I have knowledge of infrastructure. So I'm going to create a virtual machine which is known as EC2 here. And that virtual, that VM is known as here instance. So you will create an instance here, EC2 instance, where you can do web hosting, database. You can manage your databases here. You can manage your authentication and anything a server can do. So whatever a server can do, you can do on EC2 as well. We have different flavors of operating system which you can select from AWS AMI page. Let me show you the next, so through which you would be able to understand. Now, Amazon EC2 can solve some problems that are more difficult with on-premise servers, like data-driven decisions, quick irritations, and free to make mistakes, which we have already discussed. So now services are on demand. We can do mistakes, and through those mistakes, we can learn on cloud. Correct. Just because whenever you are using these resources, so these are disposable resources. That means anytime you can deprovision resources. If you are facing any issue, if you did some mistake on your resources, you can deprovision your resources at any time and you can recreate your resources. So that means we are free to make mistakes here. You can do mistakes and you can learn from your mistakes on cloud platform. Now, whenever you have to launch any VM. Well, now, why I'm using VM? Just because in on-premises, if we are from infrastructure background, so we have used VMware ESXi server, Citrix Xen server, or Hyper-V server from Microsoft family. So where we have created virtual machines. So we have created virtual machines on VMware platform, on Hyper-V platform, on Citrix platform. So similarly, if we need to create a virtual machine on AWS, so that virtual machine is known as here EC2. Correct. So if you have to create any server, any virtual machine on AWS, you will create a EC2 instance. So whenever you will create a EC2 instance, AWS will redirect you first to this AMI page. That means you will be redirected to this AMI page. You need to choose a AMI. Now, what is this AMI? That is known as Amazon Machine Image. That means operating system. You need to select a OS first for your resources, for your hardware. Now, you would be able to select your operating system, which could be Windows, Linux, or Amazon Linux, which is a customized Linux kernel operating system, which is provided by AWS as well. You can use Red Hat, Ubuntu, Debian. So we have these flavors as well into AWS. We have some images from Marketplace as well, which you can use. Like if there would be some compliance, and you need to use some resources which you need to put into your cloud for any virtual appliance, any virtual network appliance, like Barracuda or ASA. Okay, so if you have that kind of requirement, which you need to that resource you need to place into your cloud network. Okay, so you will get those kind of resources from AWS Marketplace. So AWS have the tie-up of the vendors, and you will get all those resources from Marketplace. You can place those resources inside your cloud network. If you have some compliance policies, so similarly, we can select our OS through this AMI, and then to whenever you will select this AMI, you can provision your servers, your EC2 instances. Correct. Now through single AMI, you can provision multiple EC2 instances. Just because these AMIs you can understand like a template. So this would be like a template. Okay, where all the configuration is specified, like your operating system version, and there would be some pre-installed tools would be there, which you can check from the AMI page, the kind of tools which is installed or which you will get along with this, like PHP, Python, Java. These are the packages which you will get into some AWS AMI, which is pre-installed, or AWS CLI, which is pre-installed inside this AMI. So that means there would be a template which you will get through AMI. You need to use this template, and through this template, you would be able to launch multiple EC2 instances. From single AMI, you can launch multiple EC2 servers instances on AWS. So now, and we can customize as well. Yes. So if you want to customize any AMI, yes, you can customize your AMI. That means you need to provision your server. Now that is the server. Let's assume like this would be a server, Windows 2016 server, which I provision through a AMI from AWS. So I will get a raw OS here, where I have only Windows Server 2016. Now what I will do, I will install my services, my tools, my softwares, on this EC2 instance, and if there would be any compliance monitoring tool which I need to install, like antivirus. Okay, so I will install all those tools as well here. Correct. Now I will ready this server, and then what I will do, I will create an image from this server. Whenever I will create this image is known as customized AMI. So this would be a customized AMI, or you can say a private AMI for my project, for my organization. Now, rather than creating your servers from this AWS AMI, okay, for your project, just because these tools, these services would be common on your web application. So whatever web servers you will place, all those tools and services would be common for your web application. So now, rather than creating a AMI through this Amazon AMI, okay, and then set up your services here, which will take lots of time and effort, and there would be administrative headache as well, okay, overhead as well, which you will face. So what you can do, you can create an image which is known as master image or folder image into production environment, and then you can use this image for your servers. Okay, and you don't need to install these services, these tools, software, and antivirus inside your EC2 server. You will get all these, which would be pre-configured into your AMI. Correct. And you only need to launch your server with these pre-configured services, tools, and softwares that we can do. So the customization is there. We can customize our AMI as per our requirement. Now, what is AMI? I already told you that AMI is the type of template which would be where there would be a root volume. Root volume is where your booting files, your operating system files, which would be stored. So there would be a launch permission. That means you require a launch permission. There would be a block device mapping. That means there would be a storage which would be attached to your server where your booting files will be stored. That you will get along with this AMI on your EC2 instance. Now, launching an EC2 instance with AMI, with this Amazon Machine Image or AMI, there are three ways to get your AMI. First is pre-built. As I told you, that you will get a template from AWS. That template you need to use, which is known as pre-built AMIs. Or you can use AWS Marketplace. Next one is you can create your own AMI as well. That means customization is there. You can create your AMI. You can share your AMI with publicly or privately. So we have these options here, and through which we can create our AMI. We will get the AMIs from AWS. Now, next portion is VPC. Now, VPC is the most important part into AWS cloud infrastructure. Why I'm saying most important? Just because whenever we are going to create an application and we need control, let me show you on page so you all would be able to understand. So if I'm going to create an application which would be like 2-tier or 3-tier application, it depends on our requirement basically. So if this would be a 2-tier application, that means there would be two parts of my web application. One would be front end, second would be back end. Or what we can do, we can say like a web tier or DB tier. This would be the naming convention which we are using here into production. So now, or if this would be 3-tier application, then we have web tier, F tier, and DB tier. So this would be a kind of environment or kind of requirement which depends on your application. If your application is 2-tier or 3-tier, then you need to create an environment similar to your on-premises. Now, if I need to create an environment similar to my on-premises, so what would be the first service which I will configure into AWS? Similar to my on-premise, similar to my production environment. So similar to my on-premise, let's first of all discuss about the on-premises. If I'm in on-premises, what I will do, I will set up first of all my network infrastructure. Correct. First of all, I'll set up my network infrastructure where I will design my subnets as per my departments. Correct. So as per my department, I will design my subnets. I will specify my network address, and once this would be done, then I will place my resources into these respective subnet. Similarly, if we need that kind of control on AWS, what we can do, we can create a VPC here. Now, whenever we are going to use VPC, Just because in on-premises, if we need to set up our network infrastructure, it requires lots of, there would be upfront cost, like you need to purchase hardware, switches, routers, rack, patch panels, cabling, networking tools. Okay, so all these components you need to purchase first, then you need to design your layout of your cabling. So all those would be done by you only into your on-premise data center. But when we are going to create this environment on AWS, so this would be AWS managed environment. That means all the resources like switches, routers, racks, patch panels, they all would be managed by AWS. We only need to specify our requirement here. Like for this two-tier application, I'm going to specify a requirement here, which would be like this would be my network infrastructure, network range, which would be 192.168.0.0/16. And inside this network, I'm going to create 4 subnets. Now, why I'm going to create 4 subnets, I will explain you. This would be kind of a design or kind of solution for my customers. So what I will do, I will create 4 subnets here. So first subnet would be known as like web tier. Second would be also web tier, and third would be for DB tier, and fourth would be I'm going to use for DB tier. Now, why I have used here 2 subnets for web and 2 for DB, just because first subnet I will place into AZ1. Second, I will place into AZ2, that means second data center. Then third subnet I will place into AZ1 for DB, and fourth I will place into AZ2. When I have a distributed environment where I'm focusing on high availability of my resources, in that case, I will create this kind of environment, correct, where I will get high availability. Now, how I will get high availability? So what I will do, I will place my web application into these. There would be 2 servers which would be responsible for my web application, and there would be one load balancer which will send requests to these web applications, these web servers, which would be front door for my external users who are accessing my web application. They will send requests to this load balancer, and then load balancer will distribute this request to backends, which would be your EC2 instances, which is placed into different availability zone for high availability purpose. Now, if this data center goes down, AZ1 goes down, so still I can access my resources from AZ2. Now, my first DB, master DB, which will be placed into this AZ1. So both applications are connected to both web servers are connected to this master DB, and there would be a standby DB which would be placed into different availability zone. So if there would be, if my data center goes down into AZ1, so what I can do, I can send my all requests, read or write requests to this standby server. Correct. So this would be a kind of environment which I can design. But how I can design? I need to design first of all VPC. So now let's come to our slides. So what we can do, we can create our own private network which we can manage into AWS. Correct. Then we can design our applications. Like as I told you, it depends on your tiers. So if you have 2-tier or 3-tier application, so where you can do your dev and test kind of, we will create your dev and test kind of environment, which would be isolated and which would be logical. Correct. Just because it's managed by AWS. Allow custom access, just because this would be a private network. So that if this would be a private network, then you need to provide access to the users who are going to access our resources. So that means you have the control over access, who can access my resources. Okay, all those things you can manage. So security would be managed by you if you are going to create your own VPC. So VPC is virtual network, which is dedicated to your AWS account. So exists either into IPv4 or IPv6 address ranges. That means we can use both ranges here. IPv4 and IPv6 enables you to create specific CIDR range for your resources to occupy. That means you will specify a CIDR range. As per your CIDR range, you are going to design your subnets, your infrastructure, and you can place your resources into your respective subnets. So provides strict access rules for inbound and outbound traffic. Now, when we are saying inbound and outbound traffic, so we have two layers of security here when we are going to place our resources into VPC. The first layer is known as security group, which is a stateful firewall here into AWS. Second layer is known as here NACL, which is associated to your subnet. So that means we have two firewalls here, two layers of security where we can manage our, where we can filter our traffic. So if this would be my VPC here into AWS, so and these are the subnets, and let's assume this would be my EC2 instance inside my subnet. So first layer of security would be this here, which is known as NACL, network access control list, that is known as network access control list, and which is known as a stateless firewall. So this is the first layer. Then second layer we have here, which would be associated to your EC2 instance. That means whenever you will create a server, there would be a firewall which would be associated to your server, which is known as SG, security group. So you would be able to filter your traffic through security group and through NACL by specifying your inbound and outbound rule. So you can specify your inbound and outbound rule into security group and into NACL. So security group is a full firewall. So if you will specify any inbound rule, so in respect to this inbound, it will automatically maintain the outbound as well here into state group. But in NACL, if you will specify any inbound request, you need to specify your outbound request as well. What it does mean? It means now that is my server, web application. So if this would be a web application which is placed into a subnet here. So there is a security group where I have created an inbound rule, which is for HTTP protocol, just because that is a web application. So I have enabled here HTTP into inbound. So if this would be a stateful firewall, so I don't need to specify outbound for HTTP. Now why I'm discussing here inbound and outbound, we'll discuss. I'll tell you. So I'll explain you this. Now on my subnet level, I have a NACL here, network access control list. If this would be a custom NACL, then I'm going to enable inbound rule for HTTP. So inbound is already allowed by me here into this NACL. Now this web application is connected to internet. Users are sending requests. So whenever they will send a request on port number 80 or protocol HTTP, so this request will be sent to first of all your subnet. Then there is a firewall on your subnet which is known as NACL here. So what it will do, it will check first of all inbound. So yeah, HTTP is allowed into inbound. So this request will be sent to your security group. Why? Just because on your web application you have another firewall which is security group. Then your security group will check inbound rule. So there is a HTTP inbound which is aligned port number 80. This would be done. Now for this request, for every request there is a response. That response you will get from this web server as an outbound response, outbound traffic. So now in security group, outbound is already allowed through this inbound. Correct. So that's why that is called stateful firewall. So this would be sent to your subnet level NACL. Now in subnet level NACL, you have only enabled inbound rule. There is no outbound rule configured for HTTP. So if there would be no rule for HTTP, this would be discard on your subnet level. Okay, that means your users who are accessing your web application, they will not get response from your web application. So what it does mean, it means in respect to inbound, you need to create outbound as well into your NACL, just because that is a stateless firewall here that we need to manage. Okay, so all these things you will learn into AWS solution architecting associate level course, where you are going to design your VPC, you are going to manage your traffic, you are going to filter your traffic from security group and from NACL, and you would be able to understand how you will filter your traffic, how you will create your inbound and outbound rule. All these you will get, or you will understand in your course, in your training course. Correct. So that is just an example here. So what would be the idea of this NACL and security group? Now deploying a VPC, as I told you, if I will create a VPC, so I can create a VPC into AWS regions. You can see VPCs deploy into one of 21 AWS regions. Right now we have 24 AWS regions, launched regions. So 3 regions are recently launched here by AWS. So you can launch a VPC. Maximum you can launch 5 VPC in a region. That is the limitation here. If you need to launch more than 5, then you need to create a request. You need to submit a request to AWS, and they will approve your request. And as per your request, they will provide you more VPCs. Now, whenever you are going to create a VPC, you will create subnets into multiple availability zone, as I told you. So subnets which you can create into multiple availability zone for high availability purpose. So a VPC can host resources from any availability zone within its region, which we have already discussed. So next part is serverless computing. So serverless computing means, what it does mean? It means now I don't have knowledge of any infrastructure. I am a developer, core developer, and I am only focusing on my codes which I am going to run on any service provider, any cloud provider, okay, which would be a event-driven service. Event-driven service means whenever there would be a requirement, so whatever code I have written into my server, this code will be published. So for this, we have a service here into AWS, which is known as serverless computing, or you can say AWS Lambda. So Lambda is a service which is related to serverless computing. That means you don't need to focus on your underlying hardware if you are a developer, okay, and you need to build your course, you need to write your course, which will be run on a specific event, which would be a event-driven service. So in that case, what AWS will do, AWS will give you a scalable environment. That means the infrastructure will be scaled as per the requirement. It will automatically scale. So it's a AWS managed service. Correct. That AWS Lambda, which you can use and you can build your codes, which will run on a specific events. And these codes are also known as these are event-driven services are also known as functions. That is, it will function on a specific event. So you can create your functions in terms of code, like in .NET, PHP, Java. So you will select your runtime. As per your runtime, you will get a platform, and you only need to write your codes there. So which will be provided by your service provider. So AWS Lambda is a service into AWS, which is known as serverless computing service here. So fully managed compute service. When we are saying fully managed, managed means everything will be managed by service provider. You only need to run your codes. So runs statelet codes, and it supports Node.js, Java, Python, C, Hash, and Go, and Ruby. So these are the languages or runtimes which is supported by AWS Lambda. Now it supports no, yeah. So these are the basically runtimes which is supported by AWS Lambda. So you can run your codes, you can schedule your codes to respond to any specific events. As I told you, it's an event-driven service. So you need to specify your codes or specify your functions which will be run on a specific event. Okay, let me give you one example. So let's suppose like I'm going to store, or my users or my employees who are going to use this S3. What is S3? S3 is a cloud service where you can store your objects. Which objects? Binary objects or unstructured data you can store here. So binary or blob-based data you can store here into S3 cloud, which is a cloud storage. So now your employees who are going to, so user 1, user 2, and user 3, who have the permission to upload and download data into this cloud, into your account, in your AWS account. So now, just because when we are going to use any cloud service or any kind of cloud resource, we have to pay for that resource. What I need a notification if this user 1 is going to upload any data inside my S3 bucket, or if any user is going to delete any object. Okay, so which would be a action, administrative action. Okay, so if any user who is going to delete any object from my cloud storage, so there should be some notification. Now how I will get a notification? So for this, what I can do, I can create a function. I can create a Lambda function into AWS. So I will use here Lambda service. So through this Lambda service, what I can do, I can integrate more services as well. Like I can integrate CloudWatch, which is a monitoring tool here. I can integrate SNS topic, simple notification services through which I will get an email, or I will get a SMS notification, or I can send my this event to queue services, or to a webhook, or to any ITSM tool. I can integrate ITSM tools as well. So now, whenever there would be an event, which would be a delete event, which is started by any user, correct? So what AWS Lambda will do, it will store a log into CloudWatch. There would be a log which will be stored into CloudWatch as per the code which is written by me. So I need to write a code for this here into AWS Lambda. Then there would be a notification which would be triggered by AWS Lambda. So whenever this action will be performed by any user, this event will be started by any user, AWS Lambda will start a trigger. So as per this trigger, what it will do, it will store a log into CloudWatch. That means one object is deleted from your S3 bucket, and you can specify particular bucket, you can specify particular object from your bucket. That control you have, which you can write into your code, and you will receive a notification on your email that one object is deleted from AWS S3, which is an example here for this AWS Lambda service. There are many more examples for AWS Lambda, correct? So you can integrate Lambda services with other AWS services, and then you will get notification, like you can integrate with your databases. So if any table and a column which is changed by any user, or if any data is updated, you would be able to get a notification, or whatever action you will specify, which will be run as per your code. Or it's an event-driven service, which I already told you. We have one more service, which is a business workflow service, which is known as SWS, Simple Workflow Service in AWS, which is also similar to AWS Lambda. But yes, we can create multiple parallel triggers into SWS. We can create our business workflow through which we can manage our business continuity. Now, how it works? So it can integrate with your dependencies, your code. You need to specify your configuration. Then it will execute your instructions up to 15 minutes long, correct? Which is a time duration, maximum time duration here. And this would be integrated with other AWS service. Now these are the services, like you can integrate with S3, DynamoDB, SNS, SQS, AWS CloudWatch events, target groups, AWS IoT bottoms, and many more. There are lots of services through which you can integrate AWS Lambda functions, and as per the event, your AWS Lambda will start a trigger, and whatever action you will perform, you will specify into your codes. That action will be performed by AWS Lambda automatically through those triggers. Now, benefit of serverless computing. So these are the benefits. Focus on your application, not on configuration. That means we don't need to focus on the hardware configuration. We only need to focus on our application, or on our codes. Use compute resources only upon request. So whenever there would be a request, that means whenever there would be a trigger which is started by your resource, serverless computing, at that time you will use your hardware or your resources. Build a microservice architecture. Through this serverless computing, you can build a microservice architecture. Then the last service here for this webinar, which is CloudTrail. Now, what is CloudTrail here? So now, for security perspective, now there are users. User 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is my AWS services, AWS account. Okay, and these are the different AWS services. My users, they are doing an API call to my AWS account, different API calls, which could be a management portal, or through CLI, through .NET, through like a Visual Studio, or through PowerShell, or through Java. So they are doing different API calls, and they are managing my resources as per the authorization they have. Now, if I need to check that what user is doing what kind of call, and to which IP address, what time, and what would be what resource they have access, so what action they have performed. So that is all activity data. If you are looking for all activity data which is done by your users through different API calls, so all those you will get through AWS CloudTrail. So we have a service into AWS through which you can monitor all users activity. So records AWS API calls for your account. So you will get the log files. okay, which you can store into AWS S3. Now, why we will store this service? But first of all, by default, this service would be enabled in your AWS account. Correct. So whenever this, if this is by default enabled, so why there's a need to store this service or logs into AWS S3? Okay, just because by default there is a retention period for your logs which is 90 days. So logs which would be older than 90 days, this would be removed from your account. Correct. Now for compliance, we need to store all these activities somewhere for long-term retention. So what you can do, you can store these logs into AWS S3 or into CloudWatch for long-term retention. Correct. Now, users who are doing the different calls which we have already discussed, like through console, through AWS SDKs, through CLIs, or through high-level AWS services, all those logs you can store into S3. All these activities you can store into S3, and through these activities you would be able to understand, like, this is the IP address from where you the user have done the call, and that is the action, and then that is the service. Like if I'm going to delete any object from my S3, or if I have started my EC2 instance, or if I have terminated my EC2 instance, all these activities will be logged to CloudWatch. So you will get activity log into CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and this CloudTrail can integrate with S3 and CloudWatch service, CloudWatch monitoring tool, where you can store your logs for long-term retentions. So I hope that is clear to all of you. Now these are the trainings which we are delivering, which Cognitia is delivering. Okay, and we have lots of training here, so which is on-demand trainings, correct? So which you can enroll and you can learn all those services. Now I'm going to open this chat box, so if you have any query related to this AWS or to this webinar, you all can raise your query. We are done with this webinar session. I hope you all have enjoyed this session. Thank you. Thanks for joining this webinar. I hope that is clear to all of you, the topics which we have discussed here. Thank you guys. Bye bye. Take care.